I just go to Florida for a week and I come back and things have already changed. We have a new member, Karina, where is he? Back there, I announced. We have new blinds in the building. We had 3 doors we've been waiting for a year, and they're finally installed. I come off the plane. I left Florida. It was 80 degrees. Get into Portland on Monday night. It's in the 30s. Boy, life is full of transition, isn't it? And then I get 3 inches of snow at my house with freezing rain like all of you did. It's like the whole week is kind of wasted because we're sick on top of it. But that's life, isn't it? It's full of, probably the scariest thing of all is Wednesday night we had class and I see Evie get in the SUV of the Millers and she's going to drive them home. What does this world come to? And I said, did she have her permit? Yep. I guess we all grow up, we all get older, things change, don't they? Isn't that the nature of life, right?
And on top of that, Jack, it's in snow.
Yeah. She's here and they're safe, so God's good, isn't he? So, our life is like a house. We have all these different compartments we're trying to manage. If it's not finances, it's health, it's our relationships. And we try to run everything simultaneously, and sometimes that becomes overwhelming, doesn't it? And that's why it's so important we understand there's someone that we can give control over to, and it's Jesus, because he is Lord of all. And when he's Lord of all my life, all of a sudden, all those problems seem to just become lesser, or they evaporate altogether, because I put him in charge. And is he deserving of that? And so we say Jesus is Lord of all. We see that text says it in Romans as well, that he's Lord of all men, but he only really is Lord of those who come and submit to him. Isn't that true? And we see a wonderful text in John chapter 20. And we're going to look at the whole Gospel of John today. So I really want you to open your Bibles, open your phones, open your apps, whatever it is. But John gives us a purpose statement at the end of the Gospel of John of why this book was written. And I know a lot of you are familiar with it. But in this book, we're going to see 7 signs that he talks about here in John chapter 20 and verse 30, where he says, many other signs, therefore, Jesus performed in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. That's important. Because in chapter 21, he says, there's many other signs. He said, in fact, the whole world probably couldn't contain all the signs that Jesus did. Now, that's hyperbole, right? But he did hundreds of them, perhaps. Now, a sign is a miracle. They're called signs, miracles, and wonders. Because when you see a miracle, it's supernatural. You go, wow, and you wonder how he did that. And the conclusion is what the sign points to, that this isn't just a man, this is God in the flesh. Signs point you somewhere. They lead you to a place of faith and conviction. And that's what it says here. Many other signs, verse 30, Jesus performed in the present disciples, which are not written in this book, but these have been written. Now you count them, there's 7. 7 in the whole gospel. And the final one is number 8, is be the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. But there's 7 that he performed himself in this gospel. These have been written so that you may believe. They're all that we need to believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. You don't need any more. Now I know sometimes because of space and distance, what Jesus did was some 2,000 years ago. And it's easy to feel disconnected from that time, that era, right? And even today, it's space, that he is in heaven. Where's heaven? We don't know. And it seems like he's so far from us, his presence is never with us. But I want you to be convinced here that John says, if you contemplate these signs, you can believe that Jesus is your Christ. That means Lord and King. And he's also the Son of God. And in believing, what does it say? You may have life in his name. Now, faith takes evidence, and that's what we're going to present. And it produces faith, but faith takes action. It's never passive. And we're going to see in every one of these signs, faith demands some type of trust that causes you to act. And that's how I make Jesus Lord of my life. That I'm convicted in my heart that he is in charge of everything, and so I want to give him charge of my life, and so I'm going to do what he says without hesitation. Now that's challenging to do that, but let's look through them quickly, because we could spend a Sunday on every miracle, every sign, but we're going to start in chapter 2, so look there. This is the first miracle that Jesus presented out of the 7 signs to show that he is Lord of all. And it's one we call where he turned water to wine. So we see that there's this wedding in verse 1 in the Cana of Galilee, and Mary, mother of Jesus, is there. And Jesus invited, and that's verse 2. In verse 3, the wine gave out. And the mother of Jesus said to him, they've got no wine. Now, excuse me, if you're having a wedding, the people that are most concerned how it goes are the bride and the bride's mother, and people that are throwing the wedding, right? And the worst thing you can have is to run out of food or drink. Now, wine here is just the common word for grape juice. And I want you to know that they harvest the grapes actually a few weeks after this event takes place, but they store them all year in vats or another thing, and they drink out of it all year. Now, initially when they harvest it, there's no alcohol. It's just what? Grape juice. But as they store it over the months, and they're going to drink it all year, it starts to ferment. And when it ferments, it does develop alcohol, but it's more like wine vinegar. You know, it's got alcohol, but it's not as good as fresh grape juice. So that's what they've been drinking, and they run out. And Jesus responds and says, woman, what I got to do with you? My hour's not come. That's a curious statement. But his mother says, verse 5, whatever he says to you, what? There's the action. Because Jesus is going to ask the servants of this wedding to do something that makes no sense. Because they're out of wine. So what does he ask them to do? Verse 6, there are 6 stone water pots set for the Jewish custom purification containing 23 gallons each. And Jesus says, fill the water pots. Now, if there's 6 and there's about 20 to 30 gallons in each, this is like 120 to 180 gallons of water. Do they need water for the wedding? No, what do they need? More wine. And he says, fill it full of water. Now, water's a precious commodity in Israel. And to use 120 to 150 gallons of it is quite a step to fill them up. So they do that because Jesus, his mother said, what? Whatever he says to do, I don't care if it makes sense or not, what? Do it. So fill the water pots. Verse 8, he said, draw some out now and take it to the head waiter, and they took it to him. When he gets it, he drinks it, and he goes, whoa, we have a custom here. You serve the good stuff first, and when it runs out, you send the bad stuff. Does that make sense? Because the first piece of cake's really good, so you say, do you want another one? And David goes, yeah, I'll have another piece. Now you eat the second piece, is it as good as the first piece? No. You want another piece? So David says yes, and he eats the third one, and that's when you start feeling what? Sick. So you give the best first, and it just kind of diminishes in quality, right? Have we all done that? Well, in that day, you serve the best first and then the lesser second, but this is reversed. Jesus is Lord here of both nature, the quality, and the quality. What I'm saying, he turns water completely into a different substance, into the fruit of the vine. So the very nature changes. Not only that, the quality is superior to anything they've had. And Jesus shows that here so very clearly. Now, this sets up chapter 2. Later, he's going to cleanse the temple because Jesus is a change agent. He's not there just to establish the status quo, but it's to change their minds and hearts back to God. So this is where he goes in and overturns the money tables. He's changing the moral nature of people. Then we see in chapter 3 that he can actually change the person. As Nicodemus, a ruler, comes to him by night, and Jesus says, you got to start over. You got to be born again. And Nicodemus, of course, is confused. What do you mean start over? Can I get my mother's womb? Jesus says, no. Whatever is born of the flesh is flesh, but whatever is born of the Spirit is spirit. Don't you marvel that I say you got to be born again. Jesus is a change agent. And when you come to Jesus, your life changes. When you just do what he asks. Because he's Lord. He's Lord of who you are and the quality that he wants you to be. Oh, Lord, if I could just trust you to do what you say, no matter if it makes sense to me or not, what abundance of blessings I would have in my life. Jesus responds to that and he said, this is the love of God, that you keep his commandments. And his commandments are not burdensome. What does that mean? He's not asking you to do something that's hard. He just asks you to do what you can do within your potential. And that's when the blessings come. So there's the first one. Then we see in chapter 4, we have this nobleman. This is an official. He comes to Jesus because he's here, he's in town. And his son is sick at Capernaum. There's nothing worth having a sick child, right? The only thing worse than that is a phone going off during service. No, sorry. No, actually, it happens to all of us. I shouldn't call you out, but I did. But here he comes, we hear that Jesus is in town. And we find that in verse 47, he went to him and is begging him. That's the word imploring. He's begging him to come down and heal his son because he's at the point of death. This is drastic, isn't it? Now, it's amazing what Jesus does. And he says, verse 48, unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. I don't think that's a rebuke. I think it's a truth statement. God understands and Jesus understands people need to see miracles to give evidence to trust him and to follow him. And so the official court said, come down before my child dies. And Jesus just simply says, go your way. What does that mean? Just go home. Your son lives. Now, what has Jesus done? Did any hocus pocus or said a prayer or anything? What did he just say? Go home. Your son's okay. Now, amazingly enough, the man believed the word. Just believed it. That Jesus spoke to him, and he started off. Now, notice verse 51. He was going down, and his slaves met him, saying that his son was living. And he inquired of them the hour which he began to get better. And they said, yesterday at the 7th hour. So he's been traveling a whole day, hasn't he? And his servants meet him coming home and says, guess what? Your son's alive. Everything's well. I said, when did it happen? And they rehearse the moment. And it's the very moment Jesus said what? Go home. You know what does it say? The father knew it was at the hour when Jesus said to him, your son lives. And he himself believed in his whole household. Verse 54, and again, this is the second sign that Jesus performed. It's a book of signs, 7 signs that you might believe Jesus. And you might trust him enough to make him Lord of all your life. Now, this sets up other things that goes on, but we're going to go to the healing of a man in chapter 5 who's been unable to walk for 38 years. John chapter 5. And we're in verses 1 through 17. So not only is Jesus the Lord of nature and, quality, like turning the water to wine. Now he's the Lord of time and space. He didn't have to be at the guy's home. And the space doesn't make any difference to him, right? And sometimes God feels so removed from us. But it doesn't matter. He is with us. And Jesus... He promised, even though we walk through the shadow of death, the Lord is what? He's with us. And we have to understand that just like this nobleman did. But now we have something different. We have this healing in chapter 5 at this pool. Now, verse 2, in Jerusalem by the sheep pool that was called the Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porticos. This pool still exists this day. There's some 20-some steps to get down into it. And there lay a multitude of those who were sick, verse 3, blind men, and withered, and they're waiting for the moving of the water. So what's that all about? Because verse 4, an angel of the Lord would come down periodically, stir up the water, and whoever got in the pool first was what? I guess that's to show Israel God is still with them in this miraculous way. So there's verse 5, there's a certain man there who had been there 38 years in his sickness. He's called a paralytic. We don't know exactly what his disease was. But later Jesus meets him because he's picking up his pallet, and the Jews say, what are you doing carrying your pallet, your bedroll, on the Sabbath day? And he said, well, Jesus told me to. And so Jesus gets in trouble for breaking the Sabbath. And Jesus appears to this man later, and he says, go and sin no more. So some have suggested that his sickness is due to prior sin. Is that possible? Regardless, 38 years, he's not being able to walk, and he's been laying by this pool waiting for the waters to stir so he could get in it first, and he never makes it. Why? He can't walk. He can't get there fast enough. He said, someone always beats me to it. Now notice what Jesus is asking. Verse 6. Jesus saw him lying there, and he knew he'd already been there a long time in that condition, and he said, do you wish to get well? And what an obvious answer to an obvious question. Of course I do. Been waiting 38 years to get well. I'm sure when he first came down with his sickness, his friends were there. They perhaps praying for him. He got goodwill cards sent to him. People took him meals. But after several years of that all disappeared. Now he's alone. He's desperate. He's probably depressed. There's no one coming by anymore. There's no one there to help him. 38 years of sickness. And Jesus has the audacity to ask, do you wish to get well? And the sick man answered, verse 7, sir, I got no one to put me in the pool when the water stirred up. But while I'm coming up, another steps down before me. And Jesus said to him, here's what I want you to do. Get up, arise, take up your pallet, that's your bedroll, whatever it is, sleep on, and walk. Forget about the waters. Forget about getting in there first. Just listen to what I say. Get up, pick up, and walk. And immediately the man became well, took up his pallet, and began to walk. And it was the Sabbath day. See, Jesus is Lord over time and space, but here he's Lord over sin and sickness. I don't care what the guy's done in his past life and the conditions that have brought him that currently he's suffering through, and I don't care how long it's been. When you encounter Jesus, he can make it all change that quickly. And that guy can walk. Now, he gets in trouble for it, and so the people come to Jesus and says, what do you mean? You told this guy to walk on the Sabbath, and Jesus said, my Father's working, and so the Son is working, making himself equal to God. So this sets the foundation for which they are seeking to stone and kill him from now on. And all he did was heal someone, showing that he is both Lord and Christ. He's Lord of all. So let's go look at the next one. The feeding of the 5,000. Now we're in chapter 6. His discipleship, the people that are believing or following him, is growing larger and larger in number. So now he's up north of the Sea of Galilee, and he's in a rolling hills area, away from towns or Winco, any place to get food. And there's literally thousands of disciples following him. Thousands. And Jesus sees it's getting late, and they're hungry, so he says to the disciples, how much money do I do so we can feed them? And they're going, this is a test, by the way. It says that in the text. He's testing his disciples. They said, we don't have enough money, and if we had 200 denarii, it wouldn't be enough. And he says, what do we have? He said, well, they got a guy here. He has what? 2 loaves and 5 fishes. I had to think about that. And he says, have the people sit. And so he says, have them sit down in groups of 50. And so the disciples had that happen. Now, that's to show the people they're getting ready to be fed a meal. So this is an act of faith, isn't it, by his disciples, to get them all ready. And if they don't deliver, they're going to have a riot on their hands. And all they have is what? 2 loaves and 5 fishes. Is that enough to feed 5 people? Maybe, but much less 5,000. You know how the story goes. When I say story, it's an actual account. This has really happened, even though it was some years ago. And so, verse 11, Jesus took the loaves and having given thanks, he distributed to those who were seated. Likewise of the fish, as much as they wanted. And when they were filled, he said to his disciples, gather up the leftover fragments that nothing may be lost. They gathered up 12 baskets full and 5 barley loaves, which were left over by those that had eaten. When the people saw verse 14, you see that? When the people saw the what? The sign. Did it have its effect? Did it have its intended purpose? Yes. When they saw the sign which he performed, they said, this is of truth the prophet. This is the Messiah that all the prophets have been talking about, who has come into the world. It produced faith. Now, what's very interesting, verse 15, they're so convinced, Jesus perceives that they're going to take him by force and make him king. And that's not his purpose, to become a physical king. So he sends them away, sends the disciples away across the lake, and Jesus goes up to the mountain and prays all day. But Jesus here shows he's, yes, Lord over time and space. He's Lord over sin and sickness, but he's Lord over your needs and the number. I don't care what your needs are and how big that need is, Jesus can turn a few into plenty. Whatever your need is, he knows it. And if we would just have that kind of trust and faith, and he's Lord of all my life, I will ask and it'll be given to me. And then I seek, I'm going to find, and knock, and it's going to be open to me. If I understand that he's truly Lord of all. Now we're not done, because Jesus then appears to his disciples as they're going across this lake. And we find in the 5th sign now that there's a storm. And again, these are largely fishermen. They're used to the storm on the lake of the Sea of Galilee. And Jesus hadn't come to them, because we know he's praying. And the sea began to be stirred up. We're in verse 18, because a strong wind was blowing them. They rowed about 3 or 4 miles. Now, when you're going from the southern end to the northern end, it's about 8 to 10 miles. So they're maybe halfway across, right? And when they rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea, drawing near to the boat. That's a supernatural event, isn't it? I mean, to be a calm sea would be one thing, but when there's waves and it's just tempest, this is frightening. Well, they are the ones that are frightened. And he said to them, don't be afraid. Now, when the Bible has texts like this, don't be afraid, it's said because the people are what? They're afraid. Because people don't walk on the water unless they're ghosts or spirits or a demon or something. This is supernatural. It doesn't happen. This is a sign. And it's only witnessed by who? The 12. Because they're going to be asked to go into the whole world. They're going to face worse storms and trials than they're ever going to see on this lake. And I understand this is a sign for them and them only. He said, don't be afraid. Because Jesus is Lord of any storm or any trial that you'll ever go through, isn't he? And so when they see him, they were willing to receive him into the boat. That's a very interesting phrase there. And it's easy to pass over words and not contemplate, why are they put there? What do you mean they were willing to receive him? Well, if it was a demon or a ghost, you want him anywhere in your boat. No, but when they understand it's Jesus, where do you want Jesus? In the boat. And when I am really understanding that Jesus is the Lord of all the storms, all the trials of my life, where do I want him? In my house, in my life. So they were willing to welcome him into the boat. And immediately, the boat was at the land which they were going. Now, I don't know how that happened, but immediately they're at the dock on the other end. Now, you can read about later because people are searching for him, and they don't see Jesus get into a boat, so they go all the other end and say, how did you get here? It was a sign. It was a miracle to produce faith that Jesus is in charge. He is Lord of all. every storm, everything that could happen to us. But we're not done. We have two more. And all these signs are building. And the length of time that it's given to them in Scripture grows longer. Because now in chapter 9, the whole chapter is about the healing of one man, a blind man. In chapter 8, Jesus says, I am the light of the world. That's really interesting, isn't it? And he's going to prove that by restoring light or vision to a man who's never seen ever in his life. And so we look at John chapter 9. They perceive while they're in this man who's been born blind, and they ask the question, his disciples, in verse 2, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he should be born blind? They ended understanding that bad things happen because of sin in your life. And that's generally true, but it's not always true. So did the parents sin or did this guy sin himself? Jesus said, no, neither. It was neither that this man sinned nor his parents, but this was in order that the works of God might be displayed in him. We just have to pause. I don't know what you're going through. And you might have been going through it since birth. And I'm talking to people that have had challenges that I don't even understand. And you say, well, it's not fair that my lot in life is, God has given me this. Life is not fair. We live in a fallen world. It's full of darkness and evil. And the God of this world, Satan, is ruling until Jesus destroys him. And this guy has never seen a sunset. He's never seen his parents' faith, his mother. He's touched it, no doubt, but he doesn't know what a mother looks like, much less a flower or the beauty of God's creation. He's never seen anything but darkness. And Jesus says this was intentional, so the works of God might be displayed in him. I don't know what you're going through, but it's an opportunity, whatever it is, for the works of God to be displayed in you when you accept that Jesus is Lord of your life. Amazing things can happen. Now, we don't have time to talk about the whole chapter. I wish we would. We'll take that at another time. But he goes to the man, and he spits on the ground. This is kind of gross. Because if you spat in someone's face in the Old Testament, you were made unclean. He spits on the ground, and out of the clay and the mud, he takes it and applies it to his eyes and rubs it in his eyes. And he says, now go wash in the pool of Siloam. Now, I don't know how far he is from him, but blind people can get themselves around pretty well, but he probably had someone to take him there over the hills and down to the pool of Siloam, which is in southern Jerusalem. And he went away and washed and came back seeing. Now, I want you to notice something. Jesus gave him something to do, didn't he? Faith is never passive. It's always active. And Jesus says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. That's in John 14, verse 15. In John 15, verse 14, if you're my friend, I'll be a friend to you if you keep my what? Commandments. When I love Jesus and I want to be a friend with Jesus, it's because I actively trust him so much I'll do anything he asks. I'll let him be the Lord of my whole life. So this guy goes. Now, obviously, he's heard something about Jesus, because why would you let someone put spit and clay in your eyes and then go wash in a pool? Maybe you'd go wash just to get rid of that stuff. But this man is acting in faith, isn't he? So he went away and washed. Those are two actions. He went, he washed, and he came back seeing. And we can spend time talking about what was that first vision like. Seeing the blue sky. Seeing people around him. But perhaps the best thing is when he came back and saw Jesus. We know this causes so much hoopla. People would go, is this not the guy who's beggar? And they said, oh, it can't be him. It's got to be someone who looks like him. And he kept saying, no, it's me. Well, how were you healed? He said, well, there's a man named Jesus. He told me to wash in the pool of Siloam after he put mud in my eyes. I came back and received my sight. And they said, well, where is it? I don't know. And it caused this big controversy. So the Pharisees take him in, they ask him. He tells the story again. They ask the parents. He says, well, you ask him. We don't know. And finally, they bring him back, and he said, we know this man must be of God because no man can do these kind of things. And he said, oh, so now you're teaching us? Yes, he was. And so from that moment, Jesus, who is the Lord of light and darkness, sets the stage for his coming demise. Because now, as the multitudes start en masse to follow him, equally his opposition continues to grow in wanting and plotting his death. And it takes us to the seminal chapter, chapter 11, where we have the death and resurrection of Lazarus, where we see that Jesus is not just Lord over light and darkness, but he's the Lord over death and life itself. So verse 4, we'll set the story. Jesus is in Jerusalem, and his good friends, Mary and Martha, are in Bethany. It's about 8 miles away. And Jesus' good friend, the brother of Mary and Martha, is Lazarus. He's sick. And so they sent for Jesus. They said, the one you love is sick. And Jesus, when he hears it, he said, this sickness is not unto death. I want you to know verse 4. This sickness is not unto death, but yet he does die. But get this, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified by it. I don't know how to swallow this one, because I've been known to whine and complain sometimes about my lots in life. And I've never had a sickness that caused me to actually give up my life, or I wouldn't be here before you. But there's probably times I wanted to die. And Jesus says, this sickness is so that God can be glorified and that I can be glorified through it. That makes me change my attitude to everything that goes on in my life. Is this an opportunity for God to be glorified in my problems and my trials as God gives me deliverance? Because he's Lord over everything, sickness and death and life and light and darkness and number and quality, everything. And so there's no reason ever to doubt it or to complain, but yet we're so prone to it, aren't we? But this is an opportunity for God to be glorified through my life. I come back and I hear Dave's got a better job, the fourth one. What is God doing? Oh, he's answering our prayers. You know, better how bad it gets. It's an opportunity for God to be glorified. So he waits. He waits. And he waits until he dies. And he said, okay, it's time to go. That's in verse 7. Let us go to Judea again. And the disciples said, hey, they're trying to kill you. So that's okay. I got to go because it's daytime. It's light. So he gets there, and of course, who meets him? It's Martha. And he said, Lord, I know if you would have been here, you could have done something about it. Does that show faith? Yes, right. But he says, Martha, he says, you know, I am the resurrection and the life. Your brother's going to rise again. And whoever believes in me, even if they die, they will live. And he says, do you believe this, Martha? He said, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, Son of God, he when comes to the world. But did she get it? No. Same thing goes on when Mary approaches him. And Jesus is there, and all the people are weeping over Lazarus who died. He's been in the grave now 4 days. They put in him and they sealed him with a stone over the tomb. And Jesus is so overwhelmed by death and the weeping in the morning. Because of sin, death entered into the world, and death passed into all men because all have sinned. And Jesus breaks down, and he weeps. Shortest verse of the Bible. We sing a song, what a friend we have in Jesus, who is touched by our grief and our sorrows. He weeps. Brethren, I don't know what's going on in your life, that if you in the private of your home are weeping and crying, Jesus weeps with you. He understands. And if we just had a faith like these individuals came to know, what abundant life we would have. So he tells them, remove the stone. Of course, the objection is, Lord, Lord, by this time there's going to be a stench, for he's been dead 4 days. Jesus comes back in verse 40. Did I not say to you, if you believe, you're going to see what? The glory of God. You know why I don't see the glory of God enough in my life? Because I don't believe enough. Lord, increase my faith. Remove all doubt from me. Purge me. And he's going to purge me from doubt by trials. Isn't that amazing? That's the ironic thing. That's how he increases my faith. He said, don't you believe? So they removed the stone. Jesus raised his eyes. Father, I thank that thou heardst me, because I know thou hearest me. But because of the people standing around here, I said it, that they may believe that thou didst send me. It's a sign to produce faith that Jesus is Lord of all. And when he said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he who had died came forth, bound hand and foot with the wrappings, and his face was wrapped and around with a cloth. And Jesus said, untie him, let him go. He's alive. Therefore, verse 45, here's the conclusion. Many of the Jews had come to Mary and beheld what had been done, believed in him. 7 signs, all given, so those that are aware of them might come to a point of faith in Jesus Christ. And the sign worked again. Now, what's amazing is that the priests, they are just so conflicted because we cannot deny that a noteworthy miracles take place. And if we let him going on doing this, he says, everyone's going to believe in Jesus. So they plot to kill him. Like, what? Wait, let's back that up. You acknowledge the miracle was done. You acknowledge that it's producing faith in people that witness it. So you're going to try to kill him so no one else believes in him? Why don't you believe yourself? That's the world we live in. You may sometimes confuse, like, why are we in the minority? Because most won't believe in Jesus. A few will. And we're part of the few always. That's the way it's always been. Because of people's hearts. And Lord, soften my heart. And I not be one of those. That I come to you with a full, trusting, convicting faith. That I'll bow the knee before you. And anything you ask me, no matter how big or how small, I'll say, here, my Lord, send me. So we look at it. Many of the Jews. Now, when we bring this to close, there's 7 signs. And Jesus said, that's all you need. But he says to the disciples statements like this. He says, why do you call me Lord, Lord? That's acknowledging that you trust that I'm Lord of everything. And I'm your Lord. But yet you don't do what I tell you to do. There's a problem with that. Am I really your Lord? He says this in James chapter 1, through the brother of Jesus who doubted Jesus with good reason until the resurrection. He says, prove yourself to be doers of the word and not merely hearers who deceive themselves, they delude them. They're lying to themselves. Oh, I'm a believer, but if your faith doesn't cause you to do, we're just lying. Notice what happens in everything we saw. When he turned the water to wine, whatever he says, do it. The nobleman's son, go, your son lives. So the man believed the word and he started off. The lame man, get up, pick up, and walk. He had to obey. Feeding the 5,000, have the people sit down. Walking on the water, they had to be willing to receive him into their boat. The blind man, go wash in the pool of Siloam. Lazarus, remove the stone. Makes no sense. But you've never seen a resurrection, have you? You're going to see one today. We got to prove ourselves to be doers of the word. Know how little it is or how big it is. I'm going to bend the knee. And James says this. Anyone that looks intently at the perfect law, the law of liberty, that's looking at Jesus in his face, because God has removed the blindness from our eyes and from our hearts, and we see him for who he is. And we're going to do anything else. When I look at the perfect law of liberty, Jesus Christ, who says, I am the word, the way, the truth, the life. and I abide by it, not have me become a forgetful hearer, but an effectual doer, this man's going to be blessed in what he or she actually does. You know, the blessings are our brethren. And God has blessed us in this church. We've grown for a number of 9, 10 into the 60s because you've heard and you trust and you've obeyed. And if we want that to continue in your life personally and collectively, we just got to continue on and trust that Jesus is Lord of our life. If there's a private room in your house, and no one knows your house like your spouse does, but no one knows it like you do. I'm talking about your spiritual house. And if you got a room that no one has a key to it, because that's your room that you're in charge of, the Lord knows what's in that room. He knows. He's aware. And if Jesus is Lord of all, we're giving him the key to every room in our house. It's all yours, Lord. It's all yours. And that's when the blessings start to flow. So that's our lesson. Jesus, he is Lord of all. And the question is not whether he's Lord of all. That's already been determined, isn't it? I guess the only question remains, is he the Lord of my life? And it's something each of us have to answer individually. We're going to sing a song, I Am Resolved, No Longer to Linger. And of course, John says this, where shall I go? But to the Lord, because he has the words of eternal life. Let's stand and sing this together. If I can help you in any way, won't you come make your needs known?